getting to some detail there. A lot of detail, well, I say a lot of detail, a lot of topics and headings in Rachel Reeves' speech. On the basis of what we learnt, Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor here, on the basis of what she said today, and we'll wait, there will be more detail, no doubt, we can't describe that as austerity 2.0, can we?
Well, we can't until we look at the details of what we're about to see from the OBR and from the Treasury, which we haven't looked at yet and haven't come out. My first thoughts, just looking at this, is it feels like the Chancellor's gaslighting me a little bit by telling me how good it is. And it doesn't feel like it's that good. Growth halved this year. She slipped in there, in case you weren't listening, this year from 2% down to 1%. Inflation is going to hit, I think, more than 3% later this year. And day-to-day spending, fiscal rules staying, basically doesn't feel to me like the sunlit uplands that Rachel Reeves is promising in that statement. That, she's saying that all of her planning reforms are going to have made the OBR revise up growth. Not that much, it's fair to say. 0.2 to 0.4% of GDP, of course, better than nothing. But I can't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed by that statement. I guess that was the point. It wasn't a full fat budget. We weren't expecting to get a lot in there. Almost everything that she said today was something, apart from the actual financial figures, were things that we already knew that the government was going to be doing, apart from maybe one new quango of a defence growth board, which has been launched. But I feel a bit underwhelmed.
On the positives that she is claiming, and as you say, on days like today, we have to take everything with a pinch of salt before we've dug down into it with a bit more detail. But on the positives that she's claiming, those OBR forecasts, she says, that their planning reforms, Labour government's planning reforms, will permanently increase GDP, so the nation's wealth, by £15.1 billion. She talks about the OBR says that house building will reach a 40-year high. And she talks about the OBR upgrading growth you've touched on by a small amount for next year and subsequent years. So she points to, I thought she was a bit off-piste when she said working people are feeling the pinch. That's not quite, it's a gentle way of describing what an awful lot of people are feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we sort of mentioned universal credit and the welfare cuts as well. We were talking about that with James earlier today.
But on that, she seemed to say pretty much that the OBR had assessed the reforms and said, bar a couple of million, they match her calculations of £5 billion of saving. She didn't seem to add more cuts, did she?
So she basically said that the universal credit health element will be cut. That was a new bit of information that I hadn't heard from her say before. Frozen over this Parliament, so that's going to save her a little bit of extra money. But you're right, it's taking us up to the 5 billion or ish that we were promised by Liz Kendall last week. So it wasn't quite the £3.5 billion that we thought it might raise. It's actually gone up a little bit more than that. I don't know. I just feel, there were some positive points in there. The OBR have upgraded our growth forecasts for the years coming from next year onwards. It's going up to 1.9% 2026, 1.8% 2027. And our economy will be larger than at some point that it would have been without these planning reforms.
But the big question is by how much?
By how much? 0.2%, 0.4% according to the OBR, according to these planning reforms. Like I said, it's no mean feat. It is a slither of a chunk on that. Yeah. Is it going to make a difference to people's household incomes? She claims it will. The good news is that Rachel Reeves, and now I say we haven't seen the detail of this, £500 better off by the end of the Parliament. Sounds great on the surface. I'd like to see the detail of what that will be before I comment on that.
Yeah, and she obviously wants us to think that, and it may turn out to be true, that the defence spending increases are as much about jobs as they are about protecting the nation. She talks about a £2.2 billion MOD investment next year. Defence industrial superpower was a term she used. Tech startups having a slice of the cherry for once. New technology, kind of new these days, drone technology, AI technology, and she names places that she thinks will benefit jobs-wise: Glasgow, Derby, Newport. I mean, this all remains to be seen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I will like I say, wait to see the devil in this detail before we look too much into it. But yeah, I just feel that the economics that are going on in this country and what Rachel Reeves has just been talking about don't really feel to me to be adding up at all. She says that the government have got to step up, that she's got to take these decisions. The past 6 months or so, we've been hearing about the difficult decisions that the government have to take, and she's now saying, well, it's going to be all great. I don't quite match those two statements here. She talked about a new era of security and national renewal. She said it would be protecting working people. Well, I don't think those people that are going to see work cuts to their PIP and their universal credit are going to be very protected by this. And I think the Labour MPs will be upset to see universal credit cut even more than it was.
She noticeably did not talk much anyway about the NI tax increases on business, because she knows it's caused a stink in business, and they are claiming it as anti-growth, which is why I was surprised Mel Stride didn't go straight in on that, because it's very arguable that that's a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, she's not going to talk about the impacts of her last budget, which people don't like. He could have done that. Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, some little glimmers and little tweaks around the edges is how I'd sort of describe this spring statement that we've seen. A little bit of fiddling the figures. She says she wants to increase the number of fraudsters charged by 20% each year. She says that's going to get us an extra £2.5 billion from tax evasion. So that might be good if indeed it happens. It's important to say, Sheila, these are all predictions. The Office for Budget Responsibility is all about trying to predict what government is doing and whether it will grow the economy or not. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're very wrong. It's incredibly hard to work out. So Rachel Reeves might be talking about how great she feels that the OBR has been revising up all of our forecasts going forward. Yeah. But is it going to work? Is it actually, these guys, it's like they're up and down like a yo-yo, the OBR. It's what one day it's up, the next budget it's down. So I'm not sure if I'm going to trust that that's going to actually.
And the word she used throughout, uncertainty, and a changing world, that has to be thrown into the mix always, doesn't it?
Yeah, but again, just if she was going to do that, and like I say, we talked about the potential rabbits in hat that Rachel Reeves has just could have pulled out of the hat. She has not pulled out a single rabbit out of the hat. There's nothing there at all.
No, Natasha, I am not going to throw out the fiscal rules.
No, absolutely not. So no fiscal rules. But again, no ripping up of anything. She's talking about the world has changed. She's talking about how things are different. We're in a more dangerous world, so we've got to increase defence spending. If that is the case, you might expect the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, to be a bit bolder, to be a bit bigger. And I think this sort of goes back to the heart of what many Labour MPs tell me day in, day out, is that they're worried that at the end of this Parliament, we're not sure if this Labour government is going to be bold enough and big enough to actually make huge difference.
But she says by the end of this Parliament, they are on track, as things stand, to have day-to-day spending delivered entirely by tax yield, not by borrowing.
That would be great.
That's what her target is.
Yeah, well, at the moment, we're spending £102 billion a year on debt interest. So that feels like an incredibly ambitious goal to get that down. And meeting her fiscal rules, great. Absolutely. Also wanted to point out house building. The government admitting today that they're not going to miss their housing target. They said they were going to build 1.5 billion homes. So
they are going to miss their housing target.
Yes, they said it's going to be 1.3. You might argue that's splitting hairs and not really here nor there. But that is Rachel Reeves today saying we are not building enough homes to meet our targets in 5 years' time. And already, 8 months into government, she's saying, I don't think we're going to make it.
OK. Well, listen, thank you, Natasha. Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor. We'll dig down into some of that detail and talk more about it later, throughout the programme today and no doubt tomorrow as well.